Hey everybody, welcome to The Collective. So today I have Kevin Bein, and him and I met on a golf course, a year and a half ago or something like that.
It's very random.
Just struck up a combo and just connected over, I think, more of like a business kind of philanthropic mindset.
That was right when I was starting the Longbow Foundation.
Yep.
So we were having that mutual conversation about veterans.
Yeah, I think that was the connection right
That's
there.
right.
Yep. So we got together, did a little golf, and talked about the Longbow Foundation, and the rest is history. So today's guest is Kevin Bein, a dynamic local Charleston serial entrepreneur who is the founder and owner of the Rehab Docs and Instant Ortho based on Daniel Island. But what we're really here to talk about is that Kevin is a champion for veterans and the president and director of the Longbow Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit on a mission to empower combat veterans as they transition from active duty into purpose-filled civilian life. That one hits home. Kevin's background is rooted in leadership, service, and community impact, centered around premier rehabilitation with his sports medicine practice, and he brings passion and clarity to how we support those who've given so much. His work with the Longbow Foundation helps veterans redefine purpose, build meaningful connections, and create strategic plans for their future. So, man, it's an honor to have you today on the show.
That was beautiful.
The show. And I probably missed something, but even if I didn't, can you just give a quick background, like about, I mean, you don't have to talk about like, little Kevin, but just a quick background of your life and how you ended up here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll start in college. I went to Kentucky to play baseball, which was a great experience. Ended up getting hurt, so decided to open up a book and get smart.
Nice.
Was doing pre-med at the time, but wasn't really sure if I wanted to go full medical route. Ended up choosing chiropractic school, which was a weird situation for me to choose that. I honestly had a dream to be a chiropractor, and I'd never been to one. I was
like an actual dream,
or an actual dream. I was sleeping. And I woke up. I was like, I don't know what that is, but
that's awesome.
That sounds right. So, but then looking into it, I was like, all right, well, it's a service industry in the medical field, which I'm passionate about. That kind of gives you the ability to do whatever you want when you start your business. You're not confined to one aspect of how to treat somebody.
Right.
So I found the school that I wanted to go to, and it was a little bit more medically based, Logan University in St. Louis. Got married right before going there. Had my first kid in school. Came out of school also with a master's in sports science and rehab. Got to intern with the St. Louis Cardinals chiropractor, which is huge, learning curve for me, and just the way he treated people. But I always knew I wanted to start my own business. So needed to get back somewhere warm after being in St. Louis for so long. So chose Charleston. I was like, what's hot right now? Let's go visit Charleston, and never looked back. We didn't visit another place. Is a classic Daniel Island story of seeing all the bikes, at the school, right?
Yeah.
And we had a kid and another one on the way, and it was like, all right, well, let's just go for it, start the business. So opened up the Rehab Docs in 2018. Had a couple different locations and then consolidated on Daniel Island. We actually have a new model being pushed out for that right now. But a couple years later, I opened up a gym as well. Two different entities, but really under the same roof.
Mm-hmm. Physically under the same roof?
Physically under the same roof, yeah.
Awesome.
They feed off each other, but we just kept them separate for marketing purposes. Then, I guess it was 2021, 22, something like that. Started a software company in the same space. It was musculoskeletal diagnosing. Learned a lot going the VC route. It was kind of one of those learning curves. It was something that I wanted to do. It was like, well, if I had this, if I'm able to treat somebody and I can do it repetitively, can I put that knowledge on software and then help people make better decisions about their care? That was the ultimate goal. That was an awesome experience. I wish it still existed. It does not right now. I'll tell you that story maybe a little bit later, but in that same kind of fork in the road, decision making of, do I keep going with this or do I do something else? The Longbow Foundation, a buddy of mine who, was a minority investor in the other company, he approached me and was like, "Hey, I got this idea. These people keep coming to me. You know, I'm helping them, taking them off the ledge. You know, can you help me put a business behind it?" And based on kind of my past and what I went through, I was like, I think I can help do this. So, you know, it started pen and paper actually probably a year and a half ago. Got our 501c3 8 months ago, and it's been a fun road.
That's awesome. What was his name?
Chase Carlton.
Chase Carlton. Yeah,
That's right.
remember we talked about him when we were hitting some balls in the trees.
That's right. Every which way.
Yeah, so it definitely piqued my interest, and it hits home for me being a 12-year Marine veteran, and the transition from service to, we call it civilian life, which sounds horrible now that I'm out, is difficult. And you know, I even look at folks in non-combat MOSs and trades in the military, you know, not in the Marines or Army, and still just the culture that they're embedded in for years, every day, all day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about it. You have to get approved to go off base when you're a certain rank, below a certain rank. So even if you just think about that for years, and then trying to get out, and then now you elevate that to, you know, a combat position where, I mean, you have to access a different part of your brain, and, you know, neuroplasticity and all those other things we could talk about totally change the matter up here.
Yeah.
And then you try to, you know, a certain date comes, and then you try to be a different human or go back to being the human you were.
Mm-hmm.
And it just doesn't work that way.
Right.
It just doesn't work. It almost takes longer to untie that knot than it took to tie it.
And I've heard a lot of guys kind of put it this way, and I don't mean this derogatory, but like it's you're institutionalized, you know?
Oh, 100%.
And when you get out, like you don't have as much structure. You got to figure it out for yourself. You don't have objective measures of success. You also have to change your identity, and you're put on a pedestal from what you've done.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And you almost don't want that at all. But if you think about the trauma a nail goes through when it gets hammered in, right? It's getting blunt force strikes right to the head of the nail 3-4 times, depending on how good the carpenter is, right?
Right.
Typically 3-4 times.
Miss a couple times.
Yeah. It's even getting countersunk a little bit. Try now, how long does that take? Pretty quick, right? It really does. And same with the military. Think about boot camp, combat training, boom, you're deployed. Well, now try with your fingers taking that nail out of the wood.
Pretty hard to do.
Yeah. And that's my analogy for the military. It's way easier to embed them into that culture and you know, make them killers than it is to undo that. It's really tough. So having that community, having help, assistance, and the biggest word that resonated with me was a plan, an actual plan. Our EAS date comes up, end of active service. And yeah, there's some preparation, but like I remember going to some of those classes and I'm like, they're just going through the motions, right?
Right.
So enter, you know, the Longbow Foundation, and let's talk about it. So
sounds good.
Yeah. So,
and I would like to build on that too.
Yeah.
I would say that it's more dramatic or more defined from veteran transitioning to civilian life, but I think it's a human problem. You know, I think every human has these identity crises that they have to go through, you know, to transition into or transform themselves to be the human that they're supposed to be, you know. That happens with so many different demographics of people, veteran being one of them. I met with, you know, a leader of a church a couple months ago, and pastors had the same problem. You know, they're put on a pedestal. Their burnout rate is like 50%, one of the most important individuals in a community, you know? But people go through this consistently, constantly, you know? And it's how do you find purpose and hope in the next chapter? That is the ultimate goal. Doesn't matter if you're a veteran or, you know, an entrepreneur or whatever it is, you're going to go through those struggles. How do you exit that wilderness mentality as quickly as possible?
Yeah.
And that's the goal.
It's a good way to describe it. Wilderness mentality.
It is.
Yeah.
And you get lost in there.
Yeah. And you can get lost in there. You're right. It's not just a veteran problem. We're just specifically honing in on that, but
Absolutely.
yeah. So we talked about, I mean, thanks for for giving me a quick. I mean, I don't think I've even had that deep of a conversation with you about your past, or even about the military. But so you've built serious businesses here in Charleston. You've got a lot on your plate. So why Longbow? What was it about this mission that grabbed you enough to say, yeah, I'm all in?
Yeah, that's a good question. And my past experience kind of led me to it. I think that very transparently, I think God has a plan, and either you kind of seize that moment when it comes to you or you don't. I went through my own struggles. I had a business, a wife, 3 kids, and ended up going through a divorce, which I won't get into, but that was a really hard moment as a man, a provider. I realized that I did everything for my wife and my family. But then when that's gone, then you got to do it for yourself.
Yeah.
Right? That's a completely different experience. Changing that identity and that purpose was really massive for me. And I went through a lot of struggles of figuring out how to do so. So I wrote down that process. And that's actually a lot of what we use in the roadmap for the veterans. Because again, the relatability is it's a human problem. Everybody goes through pain. Everybody goes through struggles.
Yeah.
And to back up, bring it more business sense. So the rehab docs was kind of going, and then, I made the classic business mistake, necessary mistake, but business mistake of building my business behind myself, instead of a brand. Right. And as a small business in the service industry, you kind of have to do that, but I had to take a step back to take steps forward. Right. So I needed to exit myself a little bit more, hire out and grow that way. That gave me the freedom to do the software company. The software company, it was a good learning experience. I had to take on VC money, which was new to me. Didn't really know much about it or how to go about it, but ended up losing control of the board and the decision making.
Yeah, it's the risk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we launched. We had a really good first 2 months. I was really pumped for it. And then they were like, go raise $10 million right now.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to.
Yeah,
I don't want to do that.
Yeah, but you have our money, so
Yeah,
go
I gotta
do
build the business. I can't go fundraise at the same time. It's just not going to work out.
Yeah.
But that was kind of the tail end of my own, personal transformation that I was going through. And that's kind of when I got approached with the Longbow Foundation to see if I could help build the business behind it. And I was like, well, I feel pretty equipped to help somebody transition from, creating a new identity at the end of the day.
Yeah. So it started with heart over business for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I can tell. Yeah.
Yeah. Now it's become a lot more business, but the gratification of helping those guys is still the same every time.
Yeah. Yeah. That'll never stop because you have a personal experience with that. Like it's deeply rooted in you.
Exactly.
And your personal experience.
And I don't think there's many ways to skin that cat. It's not simple to do, but it is simple when it comes down to how you transition or how you change that identity, how you find purpose and hope.
Mm-hmm.
Those are things that are very black and white.
Yeah, it's totally, I love that there's folks in this organization that didn't serve too. I mean, college athlete, business owner, it's just good to have a different mindset and get people out of their own heads because military people can get in their own heads. And like, it's just, you got to really be able to check yourself and be like, hey, come back down here. And let's let's handle the problem.
Yeah.
There's so many ways that, like you said, there's so many ways to skin that cat. But all right. So as an entrepreneur, you understand systems, leadership, scaling, pressure.
Try to.
You have to almost there.
Yeah.
You're stepping right into that ring. How do you bring that builder mindset into a nonprofit space that's serving combat veterans, stepping into a whole new chapter of their life?
Yeah. And that's like one of our biggest uniquenesses. I mean, you kind of just nailed that with the question is, and I'll start by saying this, a nonprofit is just like any other business.
Yeah.
It's a startup. It is still hard to do,
Oh, yeah.
People don't think about it that way. Typically, I would think. They think that a nonprofit is like, oh, it's a side project. No. To make a sustainable impact, you have to treat it like a business.
Right.
So we, Chase and I, brought that business mindset to the table, understanding that we have to build this good foundation. We understand that from a fundraising standpoint, we can't just have one-offs. We have to have recurring revenue over a course of time to really give back. We have to have a scalable approach to help as many people as possible instead of just relying on humans. So we know that there's a software component. There's so many things that go into it to really give back and make it right, or you just get stuck in this, startup phase that you don't want to be stuck in,
Yeah. And you have to like get off the runway. The only way
Right.
to do that is to gas it up and give it everything you got.
Right. Right.
Yeah. We definitely, I understand that because my cousin and I started a 501c3. It was called Global Outreach Initiative. We did it in college together.
Okay.
And we were trying to send, this is a failed story, by the way. We were trying to send like school supplies and things over to like raise funds and like made a whole business model around helping developing countries get access to school supplies and things to help them learn. And it was like, we quickly learned that it's a full business operation.
Right.
It's, things don't just because you go through the painstaking process of, getting approved for a 501c3, which I'm sure you know.
Yeah, that's not the easiest.
And, building out a plan and building partnerships, there's still the full business component. You have to have the tech stack. You have to have marketing, sales, everything.
Exactly.
And the staff to run it. And then again, like you mentioned, you have to buy back your time so that you can scale. You can't do everything.
Exactly.
So
it's just like a startup. Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
But on that uniqueness part of it too, I think that there are a lot, and I don't mean this in a bad way, it's just the nature of it. Like a nonprofit is typically viewed as kind of a side project. Maybe it goes, maybe it doesn't. And it's helpful for people, but it's not a business, and I think that's one of the uniquenesses that Longbow brings to the table is that we're treating it like a business through and through. If we fail at anything, we feel that heavily, but we also have the understanding of how to scale it and not just rely on, we don't want to cap that potential, I guess I'd say, on just a couple veterans a year,
Right.
How do we make this something that can really make an impact to the whole?
Yeah, and your output, your ROI, I guess, is not necessarily revenue, it's impact.
Right.
Which is totally different than the for-profit side. Right?
Yeah, for-profit is a lot easier when it comes to that. I feel like, I'm typically used to selling a product or a service for value, that's a value to somebody.
And your accountant will be like, yeah, you're doing good.
Right.
But like, how do you measure results really? I mean, there's got to be some kind of metrics you can look at, but a lot of it comes down to,
it depends on which side you're talking about, because now we're talking about either a donor aspect, right, which is part of the business, right? You have to have funds to grow,
right?
Or the veteran aspect.
The veteran aspect, yeah.
And the veteran aspect is pretty simple, I kind of put it this way, like that guy's still alive.
That's one.
He's
that's
still
the
alive.
high
That's
level.
good. Yeah.
Did they get a job? How long did they hold the job for? What's their salary? Like that type of thing, right?
And even more than that, I care more about, their happiness index, like how confident and really how confident they are in that transition. Because we're getting to guys before they get out. We want to help them understand and fill those gaps that they don't know in civilian life and translate what they're good at, right? That's one of the hardest things is like they have a ton of skill, but they don't know where that fits into the business world. If we can translate those skills for them, it's very, very helpful. But the more confidence that they have in that transition, that's where we see success. It's not like, did they keep the job for 10 years? Because sometimes, and it's individualistic, sometimes a guy might not know fully what he wants to do lifelong, but he knows it's a stepping stone, right? And a lot of times you're going to figure out what you don't want to do, and that's okay.
Yeah, it's almost just as important.
Exactly.
I mean, a good measure is excitement too, right? I mean, not just, maybe you're not super confident in the exact direction, but you see them like excited about this. Like to me, when I see veterans getting out or, military members getting out and I see that sparkle in their eye that like, oh, okay, this is a new world. I can do something with it.
Right.
I can get in there and I can make an impact, or I can go have fun, or I can do this. I'm like, all right, good. That's a good mental that's a good mentally healthy state of mind
Exactly.
or place to be in versus the opposite of what we see.
Right. Yeah. You can like,
Which is pure depression.
the optimism is palpable, right?
Yeah.
For those type of guys,
Exactly.
which is really, really fun to see. And you can see that, but you also see this, you always see that hint of fear, you know?
Oh yeah.
It's like, maybe I don't know what I don't know. And that's fair, you know, but we try to fill those gaps for them along that process, which is,
it's funny.
It's been fun.
The guys who were getting shot at, like fearful of resumes.
Right. Exactly. No, and that's the craziest thing, right? They're like, they'd rather have that. They'd rather be in and go to war. And that's easy for them because they understand it. Yeah. It's the fear of the unknown. That's the hardest part to deal with. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. 100%. Man. Yeah. I remember. It sucked.
Yeah. Tell me about your transition. Like, well, you're probably still going through the transition. You probably will never end the transition, right? But like, how was it for you?
Well, I think it's like you said, like what you said really resonated with me is there's constant transitions throughout life. Like military was one chapter. Mm-hmm. You know, it was a chapter that defined me in many ways, but it's still just one chapter. And I feel like I'm constantly transitioning, using that same sort of playbook to constantly transition to the next chapter. But I was lucky. I was the last duty station I had was here in Charleston, training cadets at the Citadel.
That's awesome.
I mean,
that is, yeah.
I was like, you know, in Charleston, I went from like, I forget how many thousands of Marines on Camp Lejeune in Courthouse Bay, because I was in MARSOC for 3 years, to Charleston. And then I think there was 13 active duty Marines, and we were looked at, honestly, from an ego perspective, I had to really work on that, because 13 high-performing Marines who got selected for this program were roaming the campus of the Citadel and going to the Marine Corps Ball downtown Charleston, and going to all these events like, you know, Hall's Chop House, because the owner of Baker Motor Company was a Marine, and they just like, you know, really
pimped you out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was, And so really gratitude filled my mind and my heart being in this position in Charleston, for a couple reasons. One, you know, I was no longer in position to be deployed because I was here, which all Marines want to be deployed. Mm-hmm. But the transition out of the military with a young daughter, my baby girl, and being acclimated into civilian life over the course of 4 years was, I mean, honestly, I think I had it the easiest, if I'm going to be honest with you. Like, no, I had like the ultimate transition package, if you will.
That's perfect.
So, but it put me in a position to be a little bit more mentally healthy, I think, getting out of the military than most. Yeah. And so I just put that back into my brothers and sisters who were getting out. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I got them all over the world now. Every military member does. And so just trying to help them kind of form their thoughts around that transition, getting involved with as many, not necessarily nonprofits, but whatever organizations I could, and whatever circles I could get into. And now, I briefly mentioned it before we started recording, but helping veterans increase their VA rating disability. I've bought back my time with Coastal Collective Group in real estate, where I'm able to run transactions, but I'm also able to kind of partition that to then do something a little bit more purpose driven and help veterans get paid.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that was awesome. Yeah, that was really my transition. Was I was here already.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic though. What you said is important. Like you go through that, especially being an entrepreneur, you're going to go through those transformation, those transition periods ever so often, especially when you start something new.
Exactly.
You know, and it looks different the same every time. Like sometimes you might really have to have a transformation. Sometimes it's not that hard, but there's always those same steps that have to be taken to reach that next step for sure.
That's absolutely right. This is a perfect next question, actually, because I've been out here for a while. Again, my cousin and I dabbled in the 501c3 world. I own a business. You own businesses. Both of our hearts are in philanthropy. So there's a lot of surface level philanthropy out there.
Right.
From your perspective, what separates writing a check from actually changing someone's life?
Yeah. and what's more important.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, what's more important, giving some guy $50,000, or, you know, it's a classic thing. Do you catch him a fish or teach him how to fish?
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
teach
Yeah.
him how to fish is that golden answer. Because at the end of the day, if you think about your purpose and hope, like your happiness, who you are as a person, I mean, that's the main thing that you want. You can have all the money in the world, but to be happy every day, that's a consistent goal.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
how do you teach somebody to do that over the course of time? You know, because there are stepwise factors to make that happen. I think for us and what we're trying to accomplish, and not just being that surface level mentality, I think we just took a really deep approach to the personal level rather than just those outcomes. You talk about the outcomes of success.
Yeah.
It's not just about the job, how much money they're making, and you know, X, Y, and Z. It's like, are you good? You know?
Yeah. Not even like, are you happy? Are
Yeah.
you like,
Are you
good?
Yeah, exactly.
And then I think the next level really there is just being content, right? Like happy
Right.
is like,
Right.
I don't know if anybody can be happy all day, but like
You can't.
contentment is like, whew.
Contentment is one of those things that like I feel like I find after happiness. You know, happiness I
interesting.
find in the journey, in the grind. Like I'm
Okay,
happiest when I'm working hard. You know,
Hmm.
boredom's my enemy. I don't like it. You know,
I like that. I've actually never heard that.
yeah. And then I find contentment after I've worked hard all day, and I'm like, I did it. I'm good. You know,
I
I
like
can
that. That's
relax. That's I don't know. That's the way I think about it. That's not one of those black and white things. It's like,
Yeah, yeah, but
fact,
that's a cool way to look at it.
yeah.
I like that.
But for us, and like what I would say, why it's not service level from the organization aspect, not only did we put a lot of thought behind how we're going to approach the individual, because we are very individualistic with what we do with individuals. Like they, you know, some guys want different jobs. Some guys have different skill sets. Some guys might not want to make a whole bunch of money, but some guys might have 4 kids. Some guys might be divorced. You know, it just goes on and on. So the goals are different.
Yeah.
You know,
Tailored plan.
exactly.
Yeah.
So what the process is, we have 3 kind of main pillars of our program that we take veterans on.
Okay.
And then everything else is just kind of scattered around in terms of that individualistic nature. We have the hunt, the roadmap, and the network, we call it. The hunt is, you know, it's basically a retreat. We're going to go, you know, hunting, fishing, whatever around the country. Great and fine, but that's not the meat of it. It's more about, you know, the hunt's more about being able to build this bond with a guy so they can actually open up and tell us what their struggles are, you know, be a little bit more vulnerable. And we have to kind of facilitate that with our vulnerability at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But it is also a space from a therapeutic aspect to get outside, you know, exit the noise, you know, have some deep thinking moments.
Yeah.
The roadmap side of it is broken down into different categories. We teach people how to find a vision for that next chapter. What does your 10 years, you know, down the road look like for you? It's not, you know, having a mansion on the beach. It's like, what do you actually want to be? You know, what's your vision for the future? Then we have the mission plan. The mission plan is a strategic action plan with finances. How are you going to get there? How are you going to get to that vision?
Yeah.
Right. Then we go through routines. I call it the battlefield, right? And the battlefield is daily. Fitness, it's nutrition, and it is mindset. Biggest one being mindset.
Yeah.
And you have to work on that. People don't typically take that white space to exit and just think.
Silence.
You know? Right.
Meditation kind of stuff, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For me, it's prayer. It's my prayer.
Very
you know?
similar. Yeah.
Yeah.
Prayer, meditation. Yeah. Very similar.
Exactly. And it builds the confidence in what I'm accomplishing or what I'm doing, right? Instead of just wasting time, because that's easy to get stuck in.
Yeah.
Wasting time and not being confident that your hard work and your effort is going towards your purpose.
Yeah.
That's
Oh man, that's the worst.
That's a problem. Yeah.
That's like the big problem of a business owner sometimes, right? It's like, is all this effort
Exactly.
gonna do
It's
anything?
like, exactly. And that's the
A/B
age-old
testing all
question.
day.
And then when you hit that wall, it's like, I got to think. I got to go think. a little
Yeah.
bit.
Oh, which is like the worst.
Right. And it takes time. It does take time.
Yeah.
But then we have this community aspect of like, you already know you're going to be like the 5 closest people to you. You know, you have to know that. You have to have that community. You have to have that support.
Yeah.
And then we go into a little bit of fear, doubt, and uncertainty and what that means. We create that relatability that it is not just you going through this. Every human goes through this.
Yep.
You will always have this level of uncertainty. How do you deal with that? And how are you okay with it? So that's kind of the roadmap aspect. Then we go into the network aspect, and the network is really the practical steps. That's if a guy wants to start a business, we're going to help them with entrepreneurship. Job placement, we help them with that. If they need other veteran resources like spousal support, like your nonprofits you were mentioning with the VA claims, anything they might need, we partner with a lot of other nonprofits that do that better than we would.
That's awesome.
So we go through the whole entire thing, but then we stay with them for life. So it's never a, you're just done. You've got the education, you read the book, you're done, right? Because we know these things are dynamic. Your purpose may change, and that's okay, and we helped them through that process lifelong. You become a part of the family at the end of the day. And that's what we want to keep together throughout the course of their career and their life.
That's huge. That's huge because it's something we look forward to or we like grow fond of. And we're not realizing that we're doing that when we go into the military is that brotherhood.
Right.
And I'm sure that's the same for athletics and a lot of other things in life.
Yeah. Right.
But just speaking from the military perspective, you're going through hell a lot of times in training or whatever else. And some people are not mentally prepared for that. And the only thing that gets them through that is the guy on their left or right.
Right.
And so that brotherhood just becomes subconsciously ingrained in you. And going into something like this, where they're super appreciative, I'm sure, for all of the guidance and that, that present brotherhood. But I think there's a big fear of I'm going to be left after this. When this is over, there's an end to this. There's an end to this. There's an end to this. So that lifelong sort of network, I think, is huge.
Absolutely.
And like,
that's one of the biggest fears that we've seen in talking to guys is just that. One, the fear of their effort not lining up with their purpose. They enter a job that they don't like and they get stuck. Like that's a huge fear because it's not fulfilling at the end of the day. But the second part of that is with a good group of people, that you can actually work hard with. It is that brotherhood mentality that they know is going to change. You just have to find it with different people.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I forget how you said it earlier, but it was something like putting all your effort and energy towards something, not knowing if it's going to make a difference or if you're going to enjoy it or what. That's definitely a big fear.
Yeah.
Of mine as well.
Oh, I still do with that.
Same.
I mean, the things that I teach in this roadmap aspect of our program, like I do all the time. Like I have to do that,
Yeah.
It's something that I think that every person should do. And I didn't just come up with it, like when I started creating this or before I started creating the program, I was trying to help myself.
Yeah.
Right. So where did I go? The Bible, right? Yep. That's there's a reason it's the best-selling book of all time.
It's a bestseller.
It's pretty helpful. Yeah.
Whether
you're religious or not, it's just got concepts that have stuck around forever, and you should probably listen to them at the end of the day.
It's a history book.
That's right, and it gives you actually simple tools to fix those problems. So we took it out of the Bible. We said these are the steps. That is the roadmap.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I was checking out your website earlier. I think the front homepage has like a Proverbs verse on
it. It does. If you don't have vision, you're going to perish.
Yeah.
You have to understand what that future holds, because one thing you can't have is hope without looking at your life better in the future.
Yeah.
You have to hope is only a feeling or this confidence of something getting better in your life. If you don't have a vision of something being better, then you're not going to be hopeful. You're not going to be happy.
Even if you're hoping to maintain what you have, if you're not growing, you're dying.
There's no in between.
There's no in between.
There's no in between.
There's no maintenance mode.
No.
It's growth mode or die mode.
Exactly.
It sounds horrible, but
that's the way life works.
It's true.
Right?
Yeah, it is.
Right. Same thing in fitness.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. A few more if you're cool with that.
Absolutely.
Okay. So for business owners listening right now, real estate, healthcare, finance, construction, doesn't matter. what does stepping up actually look like? Not the whole social media world, but real partnership, real structure, real accountability. How can someone in this Charleston business community make a difference that actually lasts?
I think that's a really I wouldn't call it a personal question, but it starts with the individual. It's hard to be an entrepreneur because it's hard on yourself. It's not the external variables that make it hard. It's what you're doing for yourself, how you're thinking. If you're doing it for money rather than for your purpose, you're probably off. I think as humans, we're all pretty much in the same space of smartness. Some people are really smart, some people are really dumb, but I'd say the majority of us, like, our capacity is the same.
Yeah.
It's just the inputs versus the outputs is the way I would say it. The output of the human brain is not that complicated. The input is always different.
Yeah.
And that's where we get into like the PTSD and all that type of stuff. But from an entrepreneur perspective, the inputs, can get overwhelming if they're not controlled in this middle barrier to control the output of what you're dealing with. Then you get the anxiety, then you get the fear, you get the depression, you get all of those things that are going to be inhibiting factors on your success.
Yeah.
So what's the main thing to focus on is that middle ground. You got to put that armor on, daily to succeed. And if you do that, time was the only variable. Then you can win.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not a set it and forget it, but it's definitely a better recipe.
Oh yeah.
To move forward.
Oh yeah. If you have that armor on, you can handle the external variables, and then the output of your actions and how you work. It's not that bad.
So what's your armor?
For me, it's honestly part of that roadmap conversation. For me, it's going to be, working out. It's going to be the easy stuff. It's going to be, nutrition, having a good diet.
Yeah.
But it's also that mindset side of it. There's a certain amount of time you have to think, meditate, pray, whatever you want to call it, to have confidence in your direction.
Yeah, and you can't just flagrantly think, meditate, or pray.
Yeah.
There's got to be a theme, a purpose behind it.
Yeah,
just like thoughts, I believe, are inputs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if they're inputs from something else or from you or both, but those need to be managed as well. And I think that's maybe what the pivotal point is between external inputs and then, you're kind of like internal battleground.
Yes.
That you have to control that environment.
You have to.
So then you can control your outputs.
And then how do you do that? I think one of the biggest mistakes that people make, not just entrepreneurs, but anybody, is they don't treat their life like a business plan. They can treat a business plan like a business plan. You can start a construction company and then have a full business plan laid out with scalability, but they don't treat themselves with a business plan.
Yeah. I mean, how often do you see an out of shape, unhealthy millionaire? Billionaire, right? I mean, like, you don't see it often, but you see it in the business world rather than the entrepreneurial world. I think your mind went to the entrepreneurial world.
I went to the movies.
Yeah.
That's where I went.
I think, coming from the military, went to corporate right away. And I was like, oh my gosh, nobody takes care of themselves.
Yeah.
And all these guys are making a couple $100,000 a year at the minimum. And I was like, that's kind of where I went with this conversation is, you can have this business plan and all of that can be executed flawlessly. But what about the business plan for yourself?
That better be written out.
Yeah, you can't lose that. No. It's not scalable to just focus on the business or whatever else and put everything into that, because like you're just doomed for failure at some point.
Absolutely.
The engine cleaning, changing the oil and all the things, like getting the car washed, all these things is like you. Right. Like the car's driving, but it's going to freaking die.
Exactly.
Soon.
Exactly.
And who do you have in the back seat? Because they're going to die with it,
because time is typically the variable.
It is.
People don't fail, just because there's not enough money, people fail because it took too much time and they couldn't deal with it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the bottom line. So we actually call the roadmap part of our program, the business plan for life. You gotta have that. Gotta have that for your marriage. You gotta have it for everything you do.
It just sounds sustainable.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're starting with this. you're ending with this. Like you're getting some numbers down, some words, some plans, so something to follow. But you guys are really focusing in on active listening is what I heard first.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are really listening with your head and your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And coaching them kind of through a mental process, and then coaching them through the plan, like the whole like connecting in the wilderness and bringing it back to kind of like the office, getting it down, and then monitoring that, keeping them within a brotherhood. It just seems like really sustainable.
It's been a really, really gratifying and fun project, and it's been great seeing the transformation with these guys and the confidence they have in their transition out of the military. And it is sustainable. The only bottleneck we have is just because we are a startup. It is the fundraising aspect. We have to build enough awareness in a sustainable sense to keep it going.
Right. Yeah. Got to get the donors.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. I want to end with that actually.
Okay.
But when you think 10 years out, what would success look like for the Longbow Foundation? Not just from a brand that's recognizable, but in terms of lives changed and the way veterans are supported when they come home.
Yeah.
10 years out, just like kind of.
This is interesting because this goes into the scalability of the business itself. It has to be scalable. We can't just be one-on-one with these guys and expect to make a huge change globally.
Because you're not bringing in revenue from that.
We're not.
It's got So this is a perfect segue to the fundraising part.
It makes it difficult on the fundraising side because a lot of philanthropic arms or people that understand philanthropy, they're looking at numbers. That's how they're making a decision a lot of the times. They're looking at how many veterans you're helping and how much does it cost, and does it have that scalable approach?
Yeah.
We're taking it individualistic, right? And we're staying with them lifelong. That's pretty hard to sell with numbers, right?
Yeah. Okay. So segueing into like the last part of this would be, how can people help you guys? How can they help make a difference? Where can they find you? What can they expect to do, give, all that?
It's typically, a couple different ways. It is time, it is money, and it is awareness, exploring your network. Maybe it's somebody likes our mission but doesn't have the means to support financially, but they have a network, right? It's just building on those networks over time. That's how they can help us. If you have a business, for example, that's extremely valuable for us. Obviously, you got the 501c3 tax write-off side of things, but businesses are truly helpful over the course of time because it creates sustainable pledges and donations for us that we can use to give back
and count on.
Exactly.
Because you have a system you have a subscription ssome of program on your website, right? Where people can go in, put their information in and give on a monthly basis.
Yes, we do. Okay. We do. And the littlest amount helps. Obviously we're looking for the whales all the time, but like any amount helps. Yeah. But yeah, we have website you can donate on. We got Venmo, Longbow Foundation. We take securities, check, and that can all be found on the website. And that's longbowfoundation.org.
Awesome conversation. I learned way more just sitting here with you than when we were golfing and talking through it. But in the show notes, we're going to put information on where to contact Kevin, how to get to their website and give donations, their Instagram, give them a follow. And dude, thank you for joining, brother. Thank you for all the information that you dropped on us today. Like, subscribe, share.
Do what you got to do.
Do all that fun stuff. We appreciate you watching. Just look out for the next one. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.